Hi, I'm Angela, and this is a Vini Yoga inspired practice for hips, hip flexors, and hamstrings. I have a couple of blocks here, so if you have blocks at home, you might want to pause the video and go ahead and grab those. I'm going to set them towards the top of my mat, not quite there. If you don't have blocks, you can substitute with anything block shaped, or you can choose to go without. We're going to get started on our backs. So lying back, let's start with the knees bent and the feet planted on the mat. And you can take your arms down by your sides. Palms will face the mat. And just take a moment to align the spine. Settle the shoulder blades onto the mat. And take a couple deep breaths. Notice whether you're holding tension around the shoulders. And if you are, maybe try to release that, even just the tiniest amount, on an exhale. And then when you're ready, pick up your feet, bring your knees in towards your chest, and you can place your hands on your knees or on your shins. And just a little movement here, whatever feels good. So you can move the knees side to side. Or you might make circles with the knees in one direction and then the other. And then hug the knees in. And then take a hold of the right leg and stretch your left leg out long. So reach your left foot toward the end of your mat. And then we'll switch. So hug the left knee in as you exhale, and then as you inhale, lengthen the right leg. And we're just going to move back and forth. You don't have to be super precise here. Just kind of introducing some movement into the hip joints. You might notice that when you extend one leg and hug the other in, that you get maybe a little tug in the hip flexors on the straight leg. Just a gentle stretch. And then let's bring both knees into the chest again. And then set the feet on the mat about hips distance apart. You can bring your arms down by your sides. We'll flow through some dynamic bridge poses, and then we'll hold the last bridge pose. So keeping the spine neutral, on an inhale, begin to lift the hips off the mat. And they can come up as much or as little as you like. I always recommend starting low, and then you can gradually increase if you want, or if it feels okay in your body. So the exhale brings you back down. The inhale lifts the hips. And the exhale lowers. So these should be slow, steady movements. So coordinating movement with breath, and then using the full length of the inhale to raise the hips, and the full length of the exhale to lower them back down. A couple more times here. Nice and slow, lifting and lowering. And then the next time that you inhale and lift the hips into your bridge pose, Consider staying here for a few breaths, pressing down through the feet. And as you feel the hamstrings and the glutes sort of holding you here, you might notice a little stretch in the hip flexors, the muscles on the front of the hips. And then on an exhale, go ahead and lower the hips back down. Good. Let's toe heel the feet out to the edges of the mat. And if you want, you can take your arms out to a T. On an exhale, let your knees fall to the right. Feet stay wide. And then inhale the knees back to center. And exhale the knees to the opposite side. Back and forth a couple more times. So a little internal and external rotation in the hip joints. The next time the knees come to center, pause. Toe heel the feet a little closer together. And then let's pick up the feet, bring the knees in toward the chest again. So we're going to make some circles with the knees, but rather than going both knees in one direction, we're going to actually go in opposite directions with the knees. So holding on to the knees, let's move the knees out to the side and then down toward the bottom of our mat. The knees come together, hug them in, out, around, together, and in. One more time in this direction. Hug the knees in and then reverse the direction of your circles. So knees move down toward the end of the mat, open out to the sides, bring the knees together. So down, out, around, and up. One more time, just like that. Good. Both knees together, feet together. Let's go ahead and extend the legs into the air. Feel free to keep a little bend in the backs of the knees. You can place your hands on the backs of your thighs. And we're just going to find a gentle stretch here on the backs of the hamstrings. So just kind of checking in here and seeing how things feel on the back of the legs. And then that can help us inform the rest of our practice, whether we need to be a little more gentle or whether we might be able to stretch a little bit more. Good. Let's go ahead and bend the knees, and then we'll roll to one side, or if you want, you can kind of rock back and forth, and we're going to make our way into a tabletop position. So coming on to your hands and knees, and stacking the wrists under the shoulders and the knees under the hip joints. Let's move through cat and cow a few times. So on an inhale, drop the belly, lift and spread the collarbones, tilt the chin up. And as you exhale, start to round the spine. Press the mat away from you, bring your chin towards your chest. Back and forth a couple more times. Inhale to cow. And exhale to cat. One more. And then back to a neutral tabletop position. So from here, I'm going to take my blocks and place one block under each hand. Now you can use your blocks on whatever level you like. I've got mine on the middle level, but if you feel like you need a little more room, you can put them up on the tallest level. So let's step the right foot forward and just place your right foot between the blocks. On an inhale, We're going to lean forward into a low lunge, and you don't have to go as far as you can. As a matter of fact, for this first one, let's just go maybe 1/3 of the way of what you might normally do. And then as you exhale, we're going to shift back. So shifting weight into that back leg and straightening the front leg a little bit. It doesn't have to straighten all the way. So moving back and forth like this, inhaling, coming forward into a lunge. And then exhaling, shifting back into a little half split. So just until you feel a stretch on the back of the right leg. Inhaling to come forward. And exhaling to move back. Moving slowly, coordinating your movement with your breath. And just notice when your body tells you that you've gone far enough into one or the other. And then the next time that you come forward into a low lunge, let's stay here for a breath or two. Feel free to keep your hands on the blocks, or if you want, you can bring your hands to your knee. Maybe you lean in just a little bit more, maybe not. Maybe you back out a little bit. And then if you want, pay close attention to your left hip flexors and inhale the arms overhead. So as we raise the arms overhead, you might feel a little more sensation in the left hip flexors. And then let's exhale, hands back down, shift back, and then bring your right knee back to meet your left knee. I'm going to set my blocks aside for a moment, come back into tabletop position. Tuck the toes under, exhale, downward facing dog. So feel free to keep the knees bent. We can move around a little. And if downward dog doesn't feel right to you right now, you can stay in tabletop position, doing whatever movements you like there. Or you might even rest in child's pose. Good. Let's inhale up onto the balls of the feet, and then as you exhale, slowly lower the knees back down to the mat. So we're back in our tabletop position. I'm going to bring the blocks back in again. And then we'll do the other side. So step your left foot forward between the blocks. And just start with kind of 90-degree angles at the knees and hips. And then beginning to move with your breath, inhaling, leaning forward, and kind of shining the chest forward, so not collapsing over your left knee. And then exhale, shifting back. Remember, starting with the smaller movements, and then maybe increasing that range of motion as you go, or staying right where you are. And so the inhale draws us forward. And the exhale shifts us back. Forward again. Back one more time. And then we're going to come back into our low lunge. We're going to pause here in the low lunge. You might keep your hands on the blocks. You might bring your hands to your knee. You might adjust the depth of your low lunge. And then if you want, again, paying close attention to the hip flexors on the right side this time. Inhale, reach the arms forward and up. You might get a little extra sensation there in the hip flexors. And then exhale your hands back down. Shift back and bring your left knee back to meet your right. All right, setting the blocks aside again for now. We'll need them one more time. Let's go ahead and tuck the toes under. Exhale, lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. And again, just taking a moment here to do whatever feels right. And again, if you'd rather hang out in tabletop or child's pose, that's fine too. So from downward facing dog, let's start to walk the feet towards the hands and then the hands toward the feet. And set your feet a little wider than hips distance apart, and we're going to come into ragdoll. So you can take your hands to opposite elbows, bend your knees as much as you like, maybe sway a little side to side. So whatever movements feel good. And then releasing the hands, let's roll up nice and slow, one vertebrae at a time. Keep the knees bent as you roll up. And then we'll roll the shoulders back a few times. Good. Step the feet a little closer together so that the ankles are kind of right under the hip joints. And then step your right foot forward. And the left foot's going to turn out a little bit so that the big toe points toward the top left corner of the mat. And I'm going to have my blocks handy here. I don't need them right now, but I'm going to place them on either side of my right foot. So coming back into this position, right leg forward, left leg back. Both legs are straight, but the knees are soft, so don't lock the knees. Let's bring our arms down by our sides. On an inhale, begin to bend the right knee as you bring the arms forward and up. And you're going to end up in this position where you're slightly forward. The shoulders are slightly forward of the hips, so it feels like there's a lot of space in the low back. And then exhale, arms come down and the front leg straightens. Let's do that a couple more times. Inhale, coming forward, raise the arms, telescope the spine out of the low back. And then exhale, arms come down, front leg straightens. Inhale, bend the front knee, raise the arms. We're coming into this warrior one position. And let's just stay here for a breath or two. And we might do a little bit of micro refinements. So maybe shifting the right hip back a little and the left hip forward. Those are barely perceptible movements, nice and small. Rooting down through the back foot, you might feel a stretch in your left calf muscles. You might feel a little stretch in your left hip flexors. And then let's go ahead and straighten the front leg, bring the arms back down to our sides. And then set the hands on the hips. Put a little bend in your front knee. And begin to hinge forward from your hips. So kind of coming to a flat back here, I'm going to bring my hands to my blocks. If blocks are too low for you, feel free to use the seat of a chair, or you could even use the back of a chair. So hanging out here, lengthening from tailbone to crown, feeling into the back of the right leg. I'm going to add a little calf stretch. So I'm going to lift my toes off the mat and kind of rock back onto my heel. And that gives me a little more sensation in my calf muscles. And then slowly setting the toes back down. On an inhale, I'm going to lengthen again from tailbone to crown. And then exhale, I'm going to start to round the spine over the front leg. And feel free to bend the right knee as much or as little as you like, as long as you're still getting some sensation in the back of the right leg. A little bit of a hamstring stretch. You're doing just fine. And then on an inhale, we're going to come back to our halfway lift position. And then to make our way out, bend the right knee. Let's inhale, raise the arms back up so we end up in our warrior one again. And then exhale, straighten the front leg, bring the arms down. Good, and then a little bend in both legs. I'm going to step the right foot back to meet the left. Let's take a deep inhale, sweep the arms overhead. And then exhale, soften the knees, forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift. Place the palms on the shins, lengthen and flatten the back. And then exhale, folding again. On your next inhale, keeping a little bend in the knees, start to come up, sweeping the arms out to the sides and overhead. And then exhale, arms down. Good, so let's repeat that on the other side. Step the left foot forward. Right foot is going to angle out just a little bit. Try to orient your hips toward the front of your mat. Arms down by your sides. On an inhale, bend the front knee. Begin to raise the arms forward and up, lengthening out of the low back. And then exhale, straighten the front leg, arms come down. Again, inhale, bend the front knee, raise the arms. Strong back leg here. And then exhale, straightening the front leg, arms come down. One more time. Inhale, bend the front knee, raise the arms forward and up. We're going to hold our warrior one this time. So anchoring through the back foot. Maybe noticing a little calf stretch. Maybe a little stretch in the right hip flexors. Good, and then straightening the front leg, arms come down. Nice tall spine. Bring your hands to your hips. Soften the front knee. Begin to hinge forward. So finding a flat back here. Hands come to blocks or a chair. I'm just going to take a moment here, sort of aligning the hips so that the pelvis feels level. So a lot of times for me, that means bringing the right hip forward and the left hip back a little. And then finding a calf stretch here. So lifting the toes of the left foot, rocking back onto the heel. Nothing too intense, just a nice gentle stretch. And then slowly lowering the toes of the left foot, lengthen through the spine again, and then if you want, exhale and round the spine over the front leg. Remember, we're not locking the left knee, and you're welcome to bend the left knee as much as you like, as long as you're still feeling a gentle stretch on the back of the left leg. Good. On your next inhale, come back to the halfway lift position, flat back. Exhale as you bend the front knee, stacking the knee over the ankle. And then on your inhale, sweep the arms forward and up, rooting down through the back foot. We're back in our warrior one position. And then exhale, straighten the front leg, the arms come down. Good, a little bend in both knees. This time I'm going to step the back foot forward. And then setting the blocks aside. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift again. And then exhale, bend the knees, plant the hands, step back into a plank position. Lower your knees and the tops of your feet. And then as you exhale, bend the elbows, lower the chest toward the mat. On an inhale, lift the head and shoulders, come into a little baby cobra, draw the shoulders away from the ears, and then exhale back down. Inhale, baby cobra again, or if you want, you can come up a little higher this time. And then exhale down. And then one more time. Inhale, baby cobra. Maybe you come up a little higher. Maybe you make it a full cobra this time. Keeping the hips down on the mat, lengthening from the crown of the head to the toes. And then exhale slowly back down. Inhale, up onto the hands and knees. And then we're going to make our way into child's pose. So the version of child's pose that I like for the hips is big toes together, knees wide, and then sinking hips back to heels, lowering the chest, lowering the forehead. You're welcome to keep the arms stretched out in front of you, or if you like, you can bring your arms back by your sides and let your hands rest by your feet. And we'll take several breaths here. So nice deep inhales and full exhales. One more deep breath here. And then let's start to lift the head and the chest. You can bring the knees together, take your feet out from under you, take a seat on the mat. And we'll make our way onto our backs again. So let's take the arms out away from the body and bring your feet together. So the edges of the feet, the inside edges of the feet are touching. On an inhale, begin to open your legs. So we're kind of moving toward butterfly or cobbler's pose, but I only want you to go about a third of the way that you might think you can go. And then as you exhale, bring the knees close together, but not all the way together. And then on your next inhale, let the knees fall away from each other again. If you like, you can let them come out a little bit wider this time. And then as you exhale, bring the knees toward each other, but not all the way together. Again, inhaling, opening the knees. You're welcome to go a little farther if you want. Exhaling, bringing the knees toward each other. And then inhale. Go ahead and let your knees open as much as they want to. And let's just take a breath or two here. And you might notice whether you are holding tension around the hips Maybe seeing if you can let go a little bit. And then slowly bring the knees together. Pick up one foot and then the other, bringing both knees in toward the chest. Extend both legs into the air. Hands behind the thighs, little bend of the knees. Let's stretch the backs of the legs one more time. And then we'll end with happy baby. So let the feet separate and start to bend the knees. Then the knees are going to move toward the armpits. Soles of the feet stay up toward the ceiling. You can hold on to the outside edges of the feet or the inside edges of the feet, or you can take your first two fingers and loop them around the big toes. If you can't reach your feet, feel free to loop a strap or a belt around the feet. It's just a tricky way of making your arms a little longer. If you like to rock side to side in your happy baby, feel free to do that. And then coming back into some stillness. Kind of moving the tailbone down toward the mat, finding a little more space in the low back. And then if you want, go ahead and loop your fingers around the big toes if they're not there already and see if maybe you can straighten the legs a little bit. A little wide-legged stretch here on our backs. And then once again, bring the feet and the knees together, bend the knees, hug them in towards your chest. A little bit of movement if you want. And then set the feet down on the mat. Stretch the legs out. Open the arms. Let's take a few minutes in Shavasana. So just kind of sense into how things feel in the hip flexors, those muscles on the front of the hips. You might notice how your low back feels. Maybe noticing the whole area of the hip joint and all those muscles that surround the hip joint. Glutes, hip flexors, hamstrings, quadriceps. Feel free to pause the video and remain in Shavasana for as long as you like. When you're ready to come out, bend your knees, plant your feet, roll to one side. And then make your way up into a seated position. And then noticing how it feels to sit cross-legged now. Is it a little more comfortable? Do the hips feel a little more open? Good. How's your low back feel? And then bring your hands to heart center. Take a deep breath in. And a long exhale. Thank you for practicing.